But I do think it's one of the unique spaces in our government where we all work together, because our roads and bridges, our airplanes, our airports, the safety of our cars is a bipartisan American issue, not a red or blue issue.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the evidence of that is pretty simple, because even in Trump's big, beautiful bill, the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act was exempt from rescission, right? So there's no better example of that than right there. I mean, the most recent bipartisan infrastructure law was exempt from all cuts in this one big, beautiful bill. You know, this hits home for me too, because our project is bipartisan as well. So our project crosses through 3 congressional districts, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. All of them come together and celebrate when we have a win. They all attend our ribbon cutting ceremonies. They attend our bus tours. So, I mean, I'm seeing this at the local level as well. Infrastructure has been bipartisan, and that's why they call it the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's a good name for it.
Can I ask a broader question? I mean, we've traveled, we've been to Tokyo or Europe, and they build trains there relatively easily with less wealth than we have. And if we can't build it in Texas or California, I just want to know a better idea, maybe for my audience, in a broad way of saying it. Why is it so hard? What is the specific challenge that it makes it so much more difficult here than in other countries where they have, again, less money?
I mean, it's fundamentally it's the rules we've created, and the rules were well established and well considered. The rules were around a sustainable mindset to make sure that we were transparent in terms of protecting our environment. And they came out of the Clean Air Act in 1970. They came out of efforts to reduce pollution, air pollution. They came out of a very enlightened process, but they started to get abused, and they became their own clay layer, bureaucratic inertia and litigation and eminent domain proceedings and process that literally paralyzed us. And so, as I say, the world we invented, in many respects, enlightenedly invented, is now competing against us. If we're going to be able to change the way we produce and consume energy, as progressives and as environmentalists, we have got to get out of our own way so we can scale up that agenda in terms of these sustainable technologies, battery storage, not just wind and solar, and dominate that future and compete globally. So
yeah, saying a lot here, but it's also saying nothing. Look, regulations, they're called red tape, but in California, we call them blue tape. This is well known. Environmental laws and regulations are very robust in the state of California, but first of all, I have to push back on the premise that we're not building trains or rail in California. We are. We're building more than we ever have. I mean, Governor Newsom has invested hundreds of billions of dollars into the rail infrastructure in California. They're doubling down on it. You know, I think the comment about the other countries, Japan, etc. First of all, fundamentally, rail has to have population centers. It has to connect population centers. I think that we'll see success connecting Los Angeles to Las Vegas, but California has made a crucial mistake with the high-speed rail by starting it in Merced and going to Bakersfield. The population centers aren't there. I think the project's been improperly segmented. That connection will have no independent utility. It's going to be a real struggle to continue to build out the high-speed rail when that's where they've chosen to start. You need population. Rail is a single user infrastructure, meaning it doesn't move anything other than passengers. So what do you need a lot of? Passengers. And those passengers aren't there in Merced and Bakersfield. It's going to be a real struggle. Look, Gavin Newsom is putting massive amounts of money into passenger rail in the state of California. Last week, I just took a tour of Caltrain in San Francisco. These are brand new electric trains. You know, honestly, there weren't a lot of people on them. We were on a tour. We were a big crowd, but there wasn't a lot of other passengers there. The new trains are quiet because they're electric, so they're not diesel. They're not putting out that particulate matter pollution, but they're going to be crazy expensive. I mean, these trains are going to have, they're going to be running on 25,000 kilowatts of overhead catenary lines. That's a massive expense for electricity. It's going to be hard to get our grid to accommodate electrified rail travel to that degree, especially when we're trying to modernize our grid for AI infrastructure and technology. Why is it so hard to build rail in California? Well, one, it's massively expensive. And two, it's not really that popular. I think that's a big part of it. It's massively expensive, and there's a tremendous amount of skepticism around passenger rail, high-speed rail in particular. And then I would say overall, it's not a popular project.
Finally, we addressed the chronic highway trust fund shortfall in a meaningful way for the first time in more than 30 years. The Congressional Budget Office projects a $142 billion cumulative shortfall in the highway trust fund over the 5-year period following the expiration of the current authorization. So put simply, the system for funding our federal surface transportation programs is broken. And our recommendation is to implement a $250 annual fee on electric vehicles and a $100 annual fee on hybrid vehicles and deposit all of those collections in the Highway Trust Fund. For too long, EVs operated on our nation's roads without paying into the system, which is primarily funded by federal taxes on gasoline and diesel. Plain and simple, this is a fairness issue. And it's time these roadway users directly pay into the system that supports the very highways that they drive on.
So what's going on here? Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill includes provisions in it that assess an electric vehicle registration fee. That passed, it's out of the House, it's going into the Senate, and the Senate will take it up. Maybe they'll keep it, maybe they won't. But why is this unique? The transportation infrastructure is funded through gasoline taxes that go into what's called the Highway Trust Fund. And for decades, there really hasn't been any kind of increase of revenue. And so for the first time in many years, Congress taking up legislation that would bring in new revenue to the Highway Trust Fund is unique. And we'll see if it makes it through the Senate, and we'll see if the president signs it. First of all, I don't think there's that many electric vehicles on the road. I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference in the Highways Trust Fund, but it's a good signal that someone's trying to do something to capture more revenue into the Highway Trust Fund, recognizing that generally speaking, electric vehicles are driving on the roads but not paying a gas tax. Yeah, that's newsworthy, and it's certainly worthy of remark. I think that electric vehicles, they're big in California, but really nowhere else, and they really struggle in, I think, cold weather areas. And overall, this is all part of a conversation about transportation funding. People see electric vehicles and more fuel-efficient vehicles like hybrids reducing the ability of the Highway Trust Fund to pay for transportation. Now, revenues into the Highway Trust Fund, they're always up, right? They go up, but it's really about the purchasing power of those revenues, because does it outpace inflation? And generally, it hasn't. And so it's the purchasing power of the Highway Trust Fund that gets eroded over time. Also, the Highway Trust Fund funds mass transit. I think that's maybe out of 18 cents or 10 to 12 cents out of the gallon goes to the mass transit fund. People have been talking, organizations have been talking for many years about, revenue sources to pay for infrastructure. This is part of the, user fee model that infrastructure generally works on, that if you're going to be using the infrastructure, you should be paying for it. And there's been this gap with electric vehicles. So, but in the same bill, you're really seeing, call it a scaling back of the electrification policies. We are seeing California's electric vehicle mandate get rescinded. And that was actually a separate bill, but that was Republicans and Democrats in the House of Representatives, and Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. Senate voted to use the Congressional Review Act to repeal California's EV mandate. Now, there's some controversy over that because usually the Congressional Review Act is for rules, and California's EV mandate is a waiver. Overall, I think that the bipartisan, bicameral votes on this issue do point to how unpopular the electric vehicle mandate has been in the state of California. It was enacted, about 5 years ago. And certainly in California, there's been a huge uptick in electric vehicle purchases. But I mean, you're not seeing anywhere of the market saturation that they were hoping or planning for. And so this is all just part of this ever-evolving conversation about electric vehicles, how funding plays a role, and how we continue to invest in our transportation infrastructure.